So if we start looking at question 3, now part A was pretty straightforward, and most of you did that really nicely. So we wanted to find C to M. Now obviously to get from C to M, we needed to go from C to A and then from A to M. Now we knew that M was the halfway point of A to B, so we found A to B, and most of you managed to get that C to M was a half B minus 3 over 2A. Now, obviously you could have had them either way around, you could have had your A's first, but you needed to make sure that that 3 over 2 was negative. Part B started to catch people out a little bit. Now, it asked for the vector O to N, but it asked for it in a very specific way. Now we know that O to N is just going to be some multiple of a vector B, so we could just write it as lambda B, but we were asked for it in a certain form, and that form had A in it, so we can't do it in that way. Now there are several ways that we can get from O to N. Okay, we could go from O up to C and then down to N. We could go from O to A to B to N, or we could go from O to A to M to N. Now, only one of those ways works. And what I'm going to recommend to you, because a few of you did send me emails saying, well, I've tried this way and I've tried this way and I just can't get it to work, is always try the simplest way first. So our simplest way is O to N, but we know that that's not what we want because it doesn't have an A component. Now our next shortest way is to go from O to C to N, because that only involves 2 vectors. Now we know what O to C is. It's going to be 2A, and we know that C to N, okay, is going to be some multiple of C to M. So we knew that C to M was half B minus 3 over 2A, didn't we? Now, both these vectors are heading in the same direction, which means they're parallel. We know parallel vectors are multiples of each other. So this vector C to N is going to be some multiple of the vector C to M. So if we look a bit further down my page, we can say that O to N is going to be equal to O to C plus C to N. We know O to C is 2A, and we know that C to N is going to be some multiple, so lambda, of this vector here. Now, if you expand out these brackets and then factorise your A components and your B components, you end up with what you were asked for. Okay, now that did stump a few of you, so make sure that you go back and have a look at what you did if you didn't get that correct. Okay, for your next one, so looking at your next one then, this was realising that in your O to N vector, that coefficient of A needs to be 0. Because if we look back at our O to N, there isn't actually an A component there. So what that means is that this here needs to be equal to 0. So if we put that equal to 0 and solve it, we find out what lambda is. Once we know what lambda is, we can substitute it back into our equation up here and find out that O to N is actually equal to 2/3 B. Now, if we know that this is equal to 2/3 B, that means that this is equal to 1/3 B, which means we split our vector into 1, 2, 3 different bits, which means our ratio becomes 2 to 1. Okay, now very few of you managed to get that, so again, make sure you go back and have a look at what you did and correct it for me, please. Now obviously you did get the mark scheme this morning, so you may well have got that from there, but it was a tricky question, so I just wanted to make sure I explained it for you. Thanks guys.